Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome one and all to the Defiant Takes Football Show. I'm Max Dean. I'm here with Kyron Samuels. And it's a little bit of a different show today. We may be permanently switching to a later hour. Looks like that's how things are going to go. So welcome to the evening live stream. Now, you can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean. You can find Kyron here at Kyron Samuels. And today we are doing a pick versus pick mock draft. So we're going to go through. We're going to take turns selecting, so it's not really a collaborative effort tonight, a little bit more adversarial, so to speak. So, Kyron, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Excited to do this one. Most of the mocks I've done have been collaborative, and you need to vote together and do it. So this would be good to just pick who you want in the moment and just go with your feeling. So I'm excited about it.
It's kind of the best of both worlds because you can choose whoever you want, but simultaneously you are still at the mercy of whoever's taken before you, right? Like you can't plan ahead and be like, I kind of know I want this guy to go to this team, so I'll let him go there because he might not be there. So we're going to jump right in. We are going to be fairly efficient with the show tonight. Not sure exactly how long it'll take, probably a little over an hour. I wouldn't be surprised if we take maybe closer to an hour and a half, but that's the plan for tonight. So let's jump right into it. Now, first of all, do you have a preference as to whether you are odds or evens in this?
No, I don't, because I don't really care about. I think the quarterbacks are interchangeable, so 1 and 2 don't really matter to me. So you can start, you can go second, don't really matter.
Okay, all right. So I'll go 1. That'll give me the Jets pick. The Dolphins don't have a first, so it's not that important. I know you're kind of like a sort of a Bucks guy too. So if you want the Bucks pick, maybe we can trade out one there. I'll be cool with that. But that means that the Carolina Panthers are on the clock. I get to choose for him. And I definitely know that I would go Bryce Young here. So that's what I'm going to do in this draft. I've done drafts where I've taken CJ Stroud just to kind of see how things might change differently. But it's kind of like you said, really. They're interchangeable in the sense that they're both very good. And whichever one is not the first overall pick is most likely going to be the second. Now, I've heard smoke about the Texans not picking a quarterback. To me, at this point, I am not buying it. I don't care how much smoke we hear. Like that regime's been there too long. These guys are really high quality prospects. So I don't know what that's all about. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a bunch of nonsense. But for the first overall pick, the Carolina Panthers are selecting Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. So what do you think about the Texans at number 2? Are you buying it or not?
So I've actually heard a lot. So I've heard they're actually interested in trading out of the pick because they're not Stroud guys. Then I've heard that they are Stroud guys and they're going to take a quarterback no matter what. Then I've heard a lot of Will Anderson rumors. D'Amico Ryans is a former Alabama player. He's very familiar with the Alabama product and he loves Will Anderson. That's been widely known. So I'm kind of interested to see what they do because there's been so many rumblings here. And this is normally what happens. Like as you get closer to the draft, you start to hear a little bit of everything. So I think they're going to go quarterback. I think you should go quarterback. The rest of the roster is going to be decent enough everywhere else where you can build around. You can build through the draft. You can acquire guys over the next couple of years, but you have to have a quarterback. And for that reason, that reason only is why I would go CJ Stroud here at the number 2 pick.
Yeah, I mean, it makes all the sense. I think Stroud is a really good prospect. And for me, the difference is just that Bryce Young, he has that special playmaking ability, the kind of killer instinct. And I think we've seen moments of that with Stroud, but I don't have this, I don't associate it with Stroud as like an inherent trait with him the way that I do with Young. But I think Stroud is very good. And it's, after going back and watching the film, it's like each game isn't littered with plays like that, but it's not exclusively against Georgia where he makes plays out of the pocket. I don't know where that narrative came from because, I know it's not as much as he could because he's a great athlete, but it's there. Like, it is there. It's not like it's not. So it's not like it just all of a sudden a flip switched and he did something he's never done before. So, all right. So CJ Stroud off the board. That means I am back on the clock with the Arizona Cardinals. I think it's somewhat unlikely that they end up making this pick, but at the same time, I'm not sure who's going up to make that move. The Colts might do it. They seem pretty comfortable with Levis, and he seems like the fourth guy. Maybe that's just smoke. Maybe they're just trying to discourage someone from going up and getting someone ahead of them. I really don't know. But I'm going to stick and pick here as the Cardinals, and I am going to take Will Anderson. I think Jalen Carter is the better prospect from a skill and physical gift standpoint a little bit, but I think that truly 100% clean character rap sheet for Anderson makes him the better prospect, like as a whole. So I'm going to take him at number 3. I think I don't know. It makes
one of the safest picks, right?
For sure. And I think Carter is like, it's a higher ceiling, but I'm not even knocking him that hard. It's just like when you've got a player like Anderson who's just right there, you just can count on him being like a guy that elevates the character of your locker room, and he's this kind of prospect, then I think it's an easy choice this high.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I 100% agree.
That's you.
Fourth. Yeah, I thought about this one a lot, and I wish that they would trade for a quarterback in Baltimore, but if they're not going to do that, I would go Anthony Richardson here at the 4th pick. I think the upside is too high, and you have a quarterback coach, a head coach that has a history of developing quarterbacks with a similar skill set. So I think that this is the pick that you go for here, and you just go for it all. If this doesn't hit, then you're back to square one if you're the Colts. But I think the risk is not as great as the reward could be. So I think you have to go Anthony Richardson here, quarterback out of Florida, with the 4th pick.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think he's definitely my 3rd best quarterback out of the group. The value on where to take him for me is that is another thing entirely, because as great of an athlete as he is, there are still players here who are just our top-notch blue chip prospects in terms of both the physical gifts and how prepared they are, how refined their technique is. So with a player like Richardson, the sky is the limit with him, truly, but it's going to be a while until he's that kind of athlete, or until he's that kind of passer. And you just don't know how a guy's going to develop, right? Like, even if everything works out the way it's supposed to, hypothetically, it's still going to be a while. So, I might be tempted to look at somebody else over him, but just with the value of the quarterback position in general, it's just not likely to happen. So if he's there at 4, it's probably going to be him. All right, so that brings me up at pick 5, and to me, this is a no-brainer too, because he's at a position of need, the best player remaining in the draft, and the character concerns, I think, are overblown. So I'm going to take Seattle Seahawks picking defensive interior lineman Jalen Carter from Georgia. So, we've talked about it before. I don't know if we need to necessarily rehash it, but he's a dominant player, and it's not a good look what happened, but at the same time, these are young people, and, it was a bad decision, and then leaving was a bad decision, like running from the incident. But ultimately, I made bad decisions when I was 21 as well. So I guess
Right.
that's the most I can say about it. How do you? We've talked about it. I don't think we need to rehash it. I think honestly, it's going to get more interesting the deeper we get down this line here. So who do you want to take for the Detroit Lions at pick number 6?
At pick number 6, I want to go Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. I think the fit is just too nice. I know they got some additions over the free agency period at the defensive back position, but you can never have enough DBs, especially in this division. I mean, you're going to be going up against Justin Jefferson twice a year. You're going to be going up against the New Look Bears and their new regime, and you're going to be going up against the Green Bay Packers, who will be looking to retool, but they have a lot of speed. You have Christian Watson, Romeo Dubes. They have some nice, young guys there. you're going to need secondary guys if you're trying to be competitive in the postseason too as well. So I think this is the fit. This is a Dan Campbell pick through and through, and the fact that you have a later first round pick will be able to address some other needs. So I think you go for the best value here, and the guy that's the best player on the board potentially, and I think it's Devin Witherspoon here with the 6th pick for the Detroit Lions.
So that's interesting because for me at pick 7, if we're going to assume that all this smoke is true, that the Raiders are absolutely not interested in Will Levis, then Devin Witherspoon is 100% who I would have taken. Because in terms of defensive scheme, where McDaniels comes from, that Patriots tree, they love man cover corners. They love hard-nosed corners who are willing to defend the run effectively. And that is Witherspoon to a T, right? Christian Gonzalez is not really the same type of guy. And for some people, he might be their number 1 corner. But in terms of fit, Witherspoon is really who I would have loved to have taken there. So at pick 7, I don't know that I need to force corner. I think definitely need some defensive line help. And, it feels rich, but I guess Tyree Wilson can be a good fit there because is he the perfect fit? No, but he's probably a good enough athlete and a good enough player. They do need offensive line help, so that's the other thing. It's either Tyree Wilson or Peter Skoronski for me. I'll go Wilson. I'll go Wilson because I think that if you're willing to not be very good and you're just going to ride it out with Jimmy Garoppolo, then you just take the higher end prospect, I guess, and then just address offensive line later. I don't know. I don't know if I can make a great justification for it, but I just don't really love how their offseason has played out so far. So it's hard for me to ricochet off of that into a pick that I really, really like and makes a lot of sense. So I'll take Tyree Wilson here at pick number 7.
Okay. Makes sense. I like it. I got an interesting one here. I thought about this one a lot. And I just think it's the best upside pick for the team and for the franchise. I think the Atlanta Falcons at pick 8, if he's here, should go Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. And the reason I think that is because they already have a really, really solid running game. I mean, you have Tyler Algier. I think he ran for 1,200 yards last year. You have a really good offensive line already that's really solidified. You just paid Chris Lindstrom. And then you have young guys, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You have some really good weapons there already. And you could add a couple more through the draft. I think they have a really high second-round pick. And then that'll be like the Josh Downs, Zay Flowers type range, where you could add another really, really explosive, really nice young receiver that complements really well with, Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So I would go Will Levis here just off the fact that I'm not a huge fan of Desmond Ridder. And the defense is looking really good, man. I think they're going to improve a lot on defense. And the bones of the offense are really good. So you're going to need a quarterback here. If Ridder's not the guy and you can give him a little bit of time to sit behind Ridder and see what Ridder has, and he becomes the guy that takes over, I think that, especially in that division, they have a ton of upside and potential. And I think the Atlanta Falcons would be crazy not to go for the bang with the quarterback because you just have to have the quarterback.
So that's interesting. So I actually like Hendon Hooker better than Will Levis as a prospect. So that's if I was going to go quarterback in the top 10 here with the 4th guy, that's where I would have gone. But in terms of the position, I don't really have a problem with it because it almost seems like they're trying to talk themselves into Ridder a little bit too hard. And honestly, they might very well do this. I mean, everything points to them not taking one, which would be a really adept setup to take one. Most of the time stuff gets out is really obvious if a team wants a quarterback, but with the amount of teams in the top 10 who do need one, maybe the fact that we've heard nothing about it is actually a sign that they do want one. So, if you want to just put them in an open competition in camp, then see who wins. And if Ritter's great, then you can probably flip Levis or Hooker or whoever else. Or if Levis is great, then you have a really cheap backup in Ritter for a while. Or if they both look good, then you can flip the other one too, right? So
I know
either
for sure
way,
that the Falcons aren't going to do this because I know they're hoping Carter falls to 8, but they really like the DBs in this class as well, and they're hoping Tyree Wilson falls as well. But if I were them, it's just like I can't pass up the potential of the value. Like none of these, and this is why none of the rest of these guys are so good at this point to where you have to take them. There's no brainers at this point because they already have the offensive line figured out. The defensive line is pretty solid. The rest of these guys aren't so good to where you have to take them at this point. So if you're going to swing for an upside pick, go for the quarterback, in my opinion.
Well, I think from a team building perspective, there's a couple of guys who I think are that good. I think Christian Gonzalez or Jackson Smith and Jigba personally, just for my personal preferences, are that good. But at the same time, they've taken receivers consecutively in the top 10 in the past 2 drafts, and they have a really good cornerback. So I think the need at quarterback can outweigh that. Aside from that, there isn't a Jalen Carter, there isn't a Tyree Wilson, there isn't a Will Anderson, right? So, like, I get your point outside of that, but the 2 that were remaining are not necessarily going to be the biggest impact, right? Like they could use another receiver, but it doesn't have to be a top 10 pick. Kind of like you said earlier. All right, the Bears, this is easy for me. Peter Skoronski, tackle from Northwestern, because for me, it doesn't matter if he's a tackle or a guard for them. They just need good offensive linemen. They desperately need high quality, reliable players there, right? So if you get him in and he's a high quality tackle in training camp, great. Then you figure out what to do with Braxton Jones. If he's not, then you can keep Braxton Jones on the left side and you can have him play a guard. But you just need high quality up front. And even though the upside is higher for some of these other guys, it's like if you made this trade to get out of one and you want to see you really invested in what Justin Fields has, then you've got to invest in the offensive line. And you could talk me into receiver, but fortunately they traded for DJ Moore in that trade back, and I think they could use more help for sure, but that makes this the easy pick for me.
Yeah.
So
I think this is the easiest one. Like after the first 2, this is probably easy to pick for sure. Peter Skoronski, they have to address it, and he's just a no-brainer. Wherever you put him, he's going to be a really good player. So I definitely agree. 10th pick, the Eagles here. I'm going to go Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama. I love this pick for them, the versatility that he brings, just the matchup that nightmares that he can create. He can take a guy like, I'm not saying he's going to do this, but the tight ends, the really good tight ends in the NFL that tend to be a matchup problem for safeties or your 5th nickel corner, whatever. He's going to be able to guard those guys. He's also going to be able to get into the blitz packages and affect the quarterback. He's going to be able to run the alley and make tackles in space. He's just a guy that fills a lot of the Eagles' needs in a way that I don't think that even they probably thought before they went and watched this tape. But if you talk about a perfect match fit, I think this is the guy, Brian Branch. You have to take him at pick 10 if he's there. It might be a little higher than some people have him, but when you're a team as good as the Eagles, you got your quarterback for the future locked in. The offensive line is locked in. You got both of your cornerbacks back, even though you probably still need a little bit of corner depth you can address later in the draft. But you get a guy like this that can help take your defense to another level. And that could probably be the difference between them getting back to a Super Bowl or potentially winning a Super Bowl in the 2023-2024 season. So really excited about that pick, and I think he'd be a perfect match for them.
Yeah. So Branch, I finally got to watch a little bit, and he is a playmaker, really. You know what I mean? Like he'll pick off the ball, he'll swat the ball at the line of scrimmage, he gets in, makes TFLs, he'll sack the quarterback, he'll kind of do everything. The one thing that I haven't seen that I didn't see personally in just the tape that I watched, and you could tell me if you've seen more of this than I have, is that I didn't see him man up and press coverage in the nickel. He played a lot of off coverage. And I think I'd want that versatility because I'd want a guy who, if someone moves to the slot and you're in and like you want to match up against a tight end and you have a team that's, you're in the playoffs and you need someone to make that, to be that matchup guy. You can't just play off and let him get 5 yards and break a tackle all the time. Like, you need someone who's going to do that to warrant a top 10 overall pick. So, I mean,
Right.
have you seen him play man, like press man out of the slot?
Yeah, he's done that before. He did it in the LSU game. He did a little bit in the Georgia game. He's done it in the Georgia game in the 2021 season. I think he has the ability to do so as well because he's gotten a lot bigger. I mean, he was probably like 180 coming in. He's a legit 200 pounds now, and he has maintained the speed throughout. I believe he ran mid 4.5s at the combine, which is pretty good. I mean, for a guy of his stature and his size, because he's a big kid, man. 200 pounds is pretty big for a slot corner or nickel safety, whatever you want to call him, because he has that versatility, and he definitely has the strength to match up as well. So I think that he's going to be much more versatile and just a jack of all trades that they need because they lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So he'll be a perfect replacement and be a guy that can run around and do a little bit of everything for them.
Okay. All right. I can get down with that. At pick 11, the thing about the Titans is that they kind of need everything, honestly. There's really no position where I feel just super set with. I think they definitely need a receiver, but they definitely need offensive line, and they need a quarterback. I mean, definitely not considering a running back this high, but they could use defensive line help. Like, they could use edge rusher help. Jeffrey Simmons is great, but they got Denico Autry last year, but he's not going to be here forever. He's a free agent. He's probably not going to be with the team for super long term. They could use more linebacker help. They could just kind of use everything. So for me in this case, I think based on the fact that your last real chance to be competitive this year is on the back of Derrick Henry, you've got to get in more offensive line help. You can get a receiver in if you want to, but so I'd be torn whether to select Smith and Jigba here, but ultimately I do want to go corner or a tackle. So I'd actually be kind of tempted to take the guard out of Florida. What's his name again?
Osiris
Torrance, because I feel like he's a great fit there. But we're gonna go with tackle out of Georgia. Where is he? I'm trying to pull him up here. Broderick Jones. Oh, PFF's not him. All right, I'm going to take Broderick Jones out of Georgia with the Titans at 11 overall because I think he's going to work really well in their run system. And I think that he's going to be like probably the biggest impact player as a year one guy. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he definitely would help out Ryan Tannehill. But if Tannehill's not protected, then, if Derrick Henry's getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage, if Tannehill's not getting protected, then I think it's not like a net plus. Yeah,
you got to imagine Tannehill won't be here after the season anyway, or we don't even know if he'll be the quarterback going into this year. You've heard there'll be some trade packages possible after the draft, so he won't be there for the future. You need to have the offensive line for whoever the quarterback is in the future be a lot better. So I definitely love the O-line pick there.
All right, you got the Houston Texans again, so you had him taking C.J. Stroud. Now who are you taking to go with him?
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer at this point. You go Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver out of Ohio State, and this would have been the pick if you had Bryce at number 2 or CJ at number 2. They need a receiver, and I think this is the perfect guy to pair up with either one of those quarterbacks, especially with CJ because they already have the chemistry. They played together. They had one of the greatest performances in college football history together. In the 2022 Rose Bowl, I believe Jackson Smith and Jigba had 15 catches for like 300-something yards, 3 touchdowns. C.J. Stroud threw for 400-plus yards and 5 touchdowns. So you got to see them at their peak powers, and I think that more of the same will continue, especially in this division. They don't have a ton of great defensive back play in the AFC South, and I think it'll be a really good chance for Jackson Smith and Jigba to come in and be pretty dominant from day one. He's already a possession-type guy anyway who's going to be able to get you some stuff after the catch as well. So I love the fit here. It'll be a really easy transition for the quarterbacks to make to get a reliable, consistent guy from day one. And Jackson Smith and Jigba was ready for that. The short shuttle times and all the explosive agility stuff led me to believe that he's 100% recovered from his hamstring injury. So I don't have any doubts about that. And his straight line speed, he was caught as low as low 4.4s, and then some high 4.4s, low 4.5s as well. So I'm not really concerned about the speed at all either. I love the pick here, and I would go Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, so I really like the pick as well. As the Jets, I would have taken him at 13 because I think he fills that slot spot really nicely for them. And I think if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, which is inevitably going to happen, you just want to kind of go all in on offense. Your defense was great last year. Even if it takes a step back, you still have some of the key pieces that made it really good. You're still going to have Quinnen Williams. You're still going to have Sauce Gardner. So for me, you don't need to go defense, and I'm not as high on any of the tackles, aside from specifically the tackle from Tennessee. I don't know why I'm struggling with names. I guess I'm just Darnell Wright. So I'm not sure why I'm struggling with these names here, but I like him at anywhere at this point in the draft. But just in terms of scheme fit, I'm not really sure, because if you take him and your plan is to have him at left tackle, then you got Becton at right, and I guess you drop Dwayne Brown. But if you plan to have him at left tackle, that means that like Becton is your left tackle and you release Dwayne Brown, or you keep Brown because you're concerned about Becton's health. And then this is tough. So it's like, I love the player, but I just don't love the fit there. And so I'm interested so I'm the Chargers, right? I'm interested in being ahead of the Patriots because I would like to select a receiver. And I know that the Patriots haven't really selected a ton of receivers high, and everyone seems to assume they're not. I'm not going to assume they're not. And if I'm the Chargers, there's a guy that I'm really interested in getting ahead of him. So are we considering doing trades in this mock? Do we want to do trades?
I mean, that's your call. I know if I was the Chargers, I wouldn't trade up for a receiver in this draft. But I mean, if you want to, introduce the trade, I would. I'll be okay with that.
All right. Well, so if I'm the Chargers, I want to go up and get Jordan Addison. That's who I'd like to go get, because I want the speed element, I want the deep element, and a guy who can contribute right away. I'm going to roll with my offensive line. I could definitely use some help on the defensive side of the ball as well, but I want that guy that we've been missing. You're going to have Mike Williams on one side, you're going to have Jordan Addison on the other, and then out of the slot, you're going to have Keenan Allen, and you're set. So that's what I would like to play out. I mean, and just as the Jets, I'm just not sure that I love what I've got available to me here anymore. Just generally speaking, do you want to do trades in this and kind of slow down the whole process, or do you want to just keep the flow moving?
Let's keep the flow moving, because I'm of the mind where I don't like trades a lot. It has to make perfect sense for the trade for me. Mm-hmm. And most of the time I'll probably just deny it anyway. And I'm not going to really propose any trade. So it might be just a waste of time, a head button there. But
all right, one-sided. All right, that's cool. I'm fine with that. So we'll just do no trades in this draft. We've done no trades up to this point anyway. So if I'm the Jets and I'm sticking and picking here, that means it's down to two guys. I'm either taking Nolan Smith or I'm taking Darnell Wright, because either one of them adds to a position that the Jets would like, and I think are good players. I'm just gonna think about taking offensive line later in the draft, and I'm just gonna take Nolan Smith because he's my favorite edge rusher that's still there. I think he's a good fit, very explosive player. They've got the big guys. They've got Jermaine Johnson on one side. They've got John Franklin Myers as well, who's kind of like that big defensive end type. And then on the other side, they've got Carl Lawson and Bryce Huff, right? So we'll see. Neither of those guys are under contract beyond this year, so they could use the speed player on the other side. So we're going to take Nolan Smith to the Jets. All right, you are up for the Patriots at 14.
So this is a really interesting one. They can go a lot of ways as well. But for the sake of history and um, the guys that have excelled with the Patriots, I think I'm going to go D line here. And I think I'm not as high on this guy as a lot of people, but I think the fit makes perfect sense here, and they'll be able to maximize his skill set. And that's Lucas Van Ness, the defensive end out of the University of Iowa. I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're going to take a guy like that this high, it has to be in the right situation like this. And the Patriots are the right situation for him. He feels the need, and I think they'll get the most out of him. And that'll be a situation where you can see a guy like that actually max out his potential, as opposed to just taking him somewhere that's just in love with his ability, but doesn't really know how to hone in and develop that. We know what we're going to get from Bill Belichick and the Patriots, so I think it's a perfect fit for Lucas Van Ness.
I agree, especially with how much they move their guys around, because I don't think he's like a ideal fit as a 4-3 end, but he's definitely not a defensive tackle. And he's more than just a run stuffing 3-4 DN too, right? Like he's more than that. Like he's got to be moved around and put in a position to rush the passer, but he can also play the run. I haven't watched as much of him as I need to get a full feel on him, but I've seen a little bit here and there, and I like him quite a bit. But I think fit is a big deal for him. All right, so that puts me on the clock with the Green Bay Packers here. So Packers, a lot of people keep saying tight end, but nobody seems to say the tight end that I really want for him. They don't really need a corner, and it's kind of crazy to me that Christian Gonzalez is still available, because he's, I think, my favorite corner in the draft as a pure coverage guy. They could definitely use offensive line help. I think I might like Darnell Wright for them, because if you go with Darnell Wright, then you can have Elton Jenkins at guard. You've got David Bakhtiari on the left side. And if David Bakhtiari is still not healthy, then you could put Elton Jenkins on the left side. And then you kind of got your assortment of interior players who can just fill in the gaps there. Yeah, I think I like Darnell Wright there, especially with a young guy like Jordan Love in there. I mean, shoring up that pass protection is going to make his life a lot easier. So I'm going to take Darnell Wright, tackle from Tennessee, for the Packers at pick 15.
I like it. Definitely, everybody's been talking tight end here, so this is cool to get a little bit of a different perspective on that. I don't hate that at all. Darnell Wright is I think it's a can't miss guy, especially in this range. Once you get to like 15 to 25 ish, I think this is where he should go, and I think that's a good pick especially for the Packers. If you're really starting to rebuild here and look towards the future, you want to get a guy like that and really build towards the future. So I love it.
All right. Then at pick 16, you have the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, so the Commanders here, I think this is the range where we're going to start seeing the run on the tackles, and this is where I would pick Paris Johnson Jr. So I'm going to go Paris Johnson Jr., tackle out of Ohio State. He's another guy that I'm not quite as high on as a lot of the masses are. A lot of people are thinking he's going to go top 10 still or top 12 still. But if he's here at 16 and you have a team like the Commanders that are building towards the future, you have a young guy that you're presumably giving the reins to Sam Howell. You have some, decent offensive line play, but you're really looking to take it to the next level. You have two really great running backs. You have a really great wide receiver. So you have a really great wide receiver room, I should say. You got Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. I mean, you got Logan Thomas, a tight end. I mean, you have a lot of weapons on offense. You need to be building the offensive line to get it a little bit better. So I would take a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. here. And really, I think in the offense like Eric Bieniemy's, where the ball's going to be out a little quicker, you're going to be able to get the pockets moving a little bit more so he can use some of his athleticism. I think it'll be a really good pick at this point. I think you got to go Paris Johnson Jr. here if you're the Commanders.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think tackle is definitely something that they need. And just where they are and who they're going to be playing at quarterback, I mean, I know Nick's a believer in Sam Howell, and I don't dispute that in any way. But it also kind of seems like they're in a holding pattern. So if they kind of need to get through a year to let Paris Johnson develop, then fine. I think if they want to make a wise pick, just adding to the trenches is a good idea. They've got the receivers, they've got running backs. They could definitely use a corner. I mean, I would be interested in Christian Gonzalez if I was them also, because I
Oh
do
yeah,
think he's a blue chip guy for me. But you can't go wrong adding to the offensive line. All right. So Pittsburgh Steelers at 17. I'm taking Christian Gonzalez. That's too easy, right? I mean, I know that like traditionally, perhaps he isn't necessarily like the exact style of corner they've gone after, but to me at 17, it's crazy that he's still here. So he's absolutely the guy that I'm picking up. I watched Joey Porter too, and I like him. I don't like him over Christian Gonzalez, though. The athleticism disparity I think is pretty significant, and I think Porter plays within himself. Like he knows who he is. He gets hands on. He's very long, and he doesn't get out athleted on a regular basis. But it's just too stark of a contrast in what the upside for these two players are, in my opinion. So if it's a need, I'd love to have gotten him a tackle. Didn't happen, but we're going to get Christian Gonzalez corner out of Oregon.
all right. We got Detroit here at 18. This is an interesting one because I would have loved like a Nolan Smith for them in this range, but he's obviously off the board here. They don't need offensive line help. They don't need a ton of DB help. At this point, I'm going to go interior defensive line, and I think the best interior defensive lineman here at this point is Brian Bresee, the D tackle out of Clemson. I think he's going to give them a ton of pass rush versatility, especially with the guys like Aiden Hutchinson. You got Hudson off the edge. You got Isaiah Buggs, who's a run stopper. So he would be a good guy to pair next to a guy like an Isaiah Buggs and some of the interior guys that they have that are a little bit more beefy and heavy. He's going to be able to get you some pass rush versatility. He's going to get you some disruption in the run game, really shoot those gaps and be a disruptor. And I think this is a perfect spot for a guy like him. Like I said, similar to Van Ness, where I think they can get the most out of his skill set and his fit will be perfect with these guys. So I like Brian Bresee here.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Brian Bresee. I mean, the athlete, the traits are all over. For me, it's like it's a lot like when I watch him, it's a lot like Paris Johnson Jr., where it pops in terms of how good of an athlete he is and how explosive he is from the inside. But it's just, I don't really see like tremendous instincts. It's for me, and he's been. Now, I know that Clemson hasn't done the best job of developing their guys. You can see that with every single one of their super athletic defensive players in this draft, right? Like, so I've watched Bresee, I've watched Murphy, I've watched Trent Simpson. And for me, they're all incredible athletes, but not as refined as a lot of other guys who would be going high in the draft. So maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it's just an overall coaching thing, but he's been with a team for long enough that it's kind of like a major assumption to me that he's going to pull it all together and be a really dominant defensive player. So I see the traits and I get it, but I would be much more comfortable with him later in the draft. But that's just a preference thing by me. I totally get that. All right. At pick 19, you want to make the pick for the Bucks? I'd be down with that. I could trade off and pick for Seahawks or something if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. At 19 here, I wanted them to go Darnell Wright here, but since he's off the board, I'm going to go Osiris Torres because I think he's the best fit for the team. They need offensive line help. This is where you can start to see some of these guards go. I think he's really, really, really going to help them in the run game. They had a hard time running the football this year. He's a guy that's just a people mover. He's a road grader. He's going to get people off the ball and reset line of scrimmages and give you a little bit more, just leeway in the run game. He's also extremely solid in pass pro. He hasn't given up a sack in 2 years. He's had one penalty through his last 2 years of collegiate football play. He's just as stout as you can get. He's as solid as you can get. And they need something like that, especially if you're going to end up leaving Tristan Wirfs on the right side. If you have a right side of Tristan Wirfs and Osiris Torrance, that could be the best right side of football already. So I really love if that's the pick for them and they're going to keep Tristan Wirfs there, I think it's a great matchup. And you have to put those two guys next to each other. So I love Osiris Torrance, offensive guard out of Florida for the Tampa Bay Bucks at 19.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can get behind that. They need offensive line help. There's no two ways about it. And he's definitely ready to play. He's ready to play right now. All right, so I'm racing through possibilities for the Seahawks at this point. I wouldn't mind going receiver for them. You know what? I'm gonna get a little crazy for what most people think. I'm going Hendon Hooker. I'm going quarterback out of Tennessee. So you're gonna let Geno play. You're gonna let Hooker learn for a bit. Let him heal up. I'm taking Hendon Hooker at 20th overall. I know that not everyone's gonna love that or agree with it, but that's my guy.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I mean, this is kind of the range where you've been hearing he might go in the last couple of weeks here, and if he's healthy and he's turning out to be on track to be able to go full speed at camp, which I've been hearing that he may be able to, then you know what, it's not a crazy pick at all. Quarterback is the most valuable position in the NFL. From every aspect, you look at the highest paid players, you look at the upside. If we're talking about maxing out a team, who can change the team the most. And Hendon Hooker is a guy that could possibly just be a very easy transition from Geno Smith. Just getting a guy in there that's really good throwing the ball vertically down the field, really decisive, and has a lot of moxie and poise. This is one thing you don't talk about when we get in the draft a lot. People want to talk about measurables and how fast he is, how far he can throw, arm strength, this and that, but they don't talk about poise, intangible stuff like that. And that's why I think Bryce Young will end up being the first pick, because he's not more physically gifted than most of these guys, but he just has it. When I say it, I mean that poise, that leadership, that just you feel comfortable with the ball in his hands. And I think Hendon Hooker has a lot of that. I mean, the last 2 seasons at the University of Tennessee, he only has 5 interceptions. So when you talk about a guy that protects the football, there's no better guy protecting the football than Hendon Hooker. And I think that's a really good spot for him. So I really like that pick. I don't think it's that crazy at all.
All right, cool. So that's going to do it. That means that I'm back up at 21 with the Los Angeles Chargers, and I get exactly who I wanted. So I'm going to take Jordan Addison, receiver out of USC. I'm going to stay right there in LA. I think that the fit's really nice. And honestly, you just don't know how long Keenan Allen's going to be with the team. Last year, he missed a fair amount of time because he was injured. So it's nice to have another player who can be a receiver for them. And it's finally a guy that I think can really take advantage of Justin Herbert, his ability to throw the ball deep. Because Mike Williams can, but he's a 50-50 ball guy. He doesn't create a ton of separation. He doesn't do as much over the middle. And it's like you don't necessarily have to double him because he's not creating separation. So adding another defender in there is not necessarily going to help at the catch point, right? That really helps more like passing guys off if you're already beaten deep. So this is a player who really threatens a defense in a different kind of way for them. So we're going with Jordan Addison here. You said you wouldn't trade up for a receiver. How do you feel about one going at this point?
I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's why I wouldn't trade up for one, because they should be here at this range. So there's not a lot of people. There's a lot of people that have needs for receivers, but I don't think a lot of people are that desperate to where they'll go up to get one. So if you can get picks, man, and trade down, I think teams should be inquiring for people that want to trade up for receivers in this draft. But I just don't see a lot of it happening because of this is where the range that they're probably going to go. And I think it's a good pick for the Chargers. I would have liked to see a guy like Bijan Robinson go to the Chargers. I think this is the range. I think this is Bijan range from 21 on. 21 to 32 is where I think we'll see Bijan go. But I do love the Addison pick, man. You can't go wrong with putting a guy like that with Herbert, and he needs more weapons for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that brings you on the clock with the Ravens at pick 22 now.
See, this is an interesting one because you wanted some edge guys here to kind of help them be a little bit more stout in the run game. But I'm going to take a little bit of a pick here and switch it up. They got Odell Beckham Jr., but I think a guy like Zay Flowers will be great here to really help them stretch the field. You need a guy that is another vertical threat, and I think he's a really good guy to pair with Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. You get a guy like that can really go vertical and let those guys, Odell do his thing in the intermediate range, and then you could let Bateman get some crossing routes and some deep comebacks and some stuff like that. I think it'll be a really good pairing match with the Baltimore Ravens and a little bit of a philosophy shift. We see Todd Monken's going to be the offensive coordinator, and he's really good at dialing up those vertical threats. And they already have the tight ends with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. So he's going to have his tight ends that are going to be really good at the seams and on some underneath stuff. And it's really going to be imperative for them to have a guy that can stretch the field and keep safeties on. And so I think, Zay Flowers is that guy. And I love the pick here for them. It might be a little bit higher than some people have him going, but fit is more important than anything in the draft, in my opinion. So this is the right fit for him.
Right. So I think the cool thing about him is that he can do a lot in terms of sweeps, reverses, anything that has motion in the backfield. He can be a threat there. And I think that makes things challenging for defenses when you've got assuming Lamar is back there in this situation, that makes it a lot harder for teams to hone in on Lamar, or because they're so honed in on him and so worried about it, an explosive guy like him can take the ball and do stuff with it. And I think in terms of RPOs, he can do a lot too, because he can get the ball quickly in space and make things happen. I think it's going to be a while until he's going to be a really effective route runner and create separation that way. But he does have good deep speed, and he can do so much for you if you get the ball in his hands and formulate some opportunities for him. So I actually do like the pick, and he is a very willing run blocker as well. Now, is he the hugest guy? No, but he will happily get his nose in there. And if you're running the ball on a lot of plays, there is no receiver at the top of this draft who's as happy to make contact with a DB and the edge. So I think there are a lot of reasons it's a really good fit. All right.
We got 23 here.
All right. So this is one. I don't know if people are going to love it because it's interesting. I'm tempted to go a couple of different ways. Okay. So Zadarius Smith is an older player at this point. Danielle Hunter's had contract issues, so they could look at a guy like Myles Murphy. They really need corner help. So Joey Porter would be nice, but at the same time, I'm not as in love with the scheme fit with how much zone they run. So I'm wondering if they could get a guy a little bit later, especially because they did invest at that position last year. And we just need to see him actually get an opportunity. So there's a few guys that I'd be kind of leaning towards. I wouldn't be opposed to Kalijah Cansey either, but who I'm ultimately going to take here is Bijan Robinson. So I am going to probably end up releasing Dalvin Cook after the draft, most likely if I don't get a trade with somebody worked out. We've already heard rumors that might be happening. And I think at 23, he's just too good of a player to pass up on anymore. And I think it makes Kirk Cousins' job a lot easier and what he can do in the passing game as well. Kirk's a guy who's willing to check it down. I think that this could take their offense, which was already very good last year, and make it exceptionally good this year again. I understand that the defense needs help. I truly do. But they're going to get some of that help with the return of rookies that were injured, and plus some of these later picks as well, I think. And I want to strike on this blue chip guy before he falls any farther.
Hey, I understand it, and I think Bijan should be gone by now. But if he's here and you can get a guy, and I don't even hate the idea of pairing him with Dalvin Cook. I mean, he's going to be on a rookie salary. I mean, get the most you can out of Dalvin Cook, and you have Bijan there. I mean, it's going to be impossible for teams to stop that, and there's no fall off at all. And you probably get a little bit more versatility out of the pass game with Bijan. So I love the pick there. And for me, 24 here with the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is the interesting one because I don't think this guy's going to be on the board here. And I had a different pick if this guy was gone, but he's here. So I'm going to go Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame for the Jacksonville Jaguars here. I think they're fine at receiver. They have Evan Ingram back for 1 year. He's on he's on the tag here, but you get a guy like Michael Mayer, it's going to really open up the offense in a lot of aspects. You're going to be able to really run some true 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, and be extremely versatile in the pass game because you have 2 guys that are really going to be good at receiving and running routes and getting open and having a mismatch. And Michael Mayer's a really good inline blocking tight end. He's going to help you in the run game. He's going to be able to, set edges and hook guys for Travis Etienne and give him free edges to run through. He's going to be able to move people off the ball. I think this is a really good pick for him, or excuse me, a really good fit for him. And that's what I try to do when I'm making these picks, is thinking about what the fit is like for the team. They have a couple needs. I think they could go corner here. I think they could go, maybe you can go another D-line, interior guy, edge guy, maybe here. But I just love the prospect of Michael Mayer with the Trevor Lawrence and that offense, and Doug Peterson, and all the versatility that he brings. It's a perfect fit for them, and I like Michael Mayer here.
Okay. So I've got the Giants here at 25, and I know that they could use receiver help for sure, but my favorite guys are all gone, right? I'm not that high on Quentin Johnson. Jalen Hyatt, I think the first round is rich for him. So I'm going to turn and look at the defensive side of the ball, since that O-line is pretty well set. I am going to take Joey Porter Jr. here. I think he's a great fit for Wink Martindale's defense. I think he loves having guys who can man up, play press man, and derail those routes while he sends those blitz packages. So I think that's a good fit. And Joey Porter Jr. is now a New York Giant.
I like it a lot. Talk about physicality and just dominant personality. He's aggressive. That's definitely a guy that will fit real well in Wink Martindale's defense. So I love the pick. Actually, I was thinking wide receiver for them here, but if you got Joey Porter Jr. here at 25, which a lot of people aren't expecting him to be, then heck, that'd be a great fit. So I like some of these picks. Some of these picks are a little bit unconventional. I haven't seen any of these mocked in the last 4 months, so I really like it. And I'm probably going to continue the trend here, because I'm going to go Darnell Washington at 26 here for the Dallas Cowboys. I love Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs would be a great fit here. And I've had him mocked to this spot in most of my mock drafts. But if Darnell Washington is still here at 26 after losing Dalton Schultz, and got a little bit of uncertainty in the tight end room right now, and you really want to still have two tight ends. I mean, they have Jake Ferguson, but having a guy like Darnell Washington helping the run game, you obviously want to run the ball first and be a dominant run team, and then you still give Dak Prescott some red zone weapons, which he's turned. He's shown he's a really good red zone quarterback. So you get Dak another red zone threat and a third down threat. I think Darnell Washington is he just fits the Cowboy mold too. Like, you think about Cowboys, you think about larger than life players, big personalities, freak looking players. He's one of those guys. So I really am excited about the prospect of him joining a Dallas Cowboy type team, and I think this would be a good place for him.
Interesting. So I am. There's nobody that I love for the Bills at 27. Okay, first of all, I really like that pick, but I'm not going to go on about it because you already know that I love Darnell Washington. We've talked about it enough. But it's a good fit. I think that adding more weapons there, this is a viable way to do it outside of just putting more receivers on the field. Get a guy who's a mover in the run game, and can also do damage as a pass receiver. So, but the Bills here, I mean, I love Kalijah Cansey. I mean, at this point, I think he's a good value. Miles Murphy too, but I'm like, for Kalijah Cansey, Ed Oliver is already like a pass rushing specialist guy. They don't really need another interior rusher who's not that good against the run, right?
Yeah,
that's not what they need. I think Miles Murphy is a solid defender against the run. He's not really a super aggressive pass rusher at this point yet. And they've spent so much on edge rusher that and they're expecting Von Miller to come back. I don't know if that pick makes the most sense for them either. I think O-line is really where they need to get better the most out of anything. They could use a receiver, but again, they've got guys. Josh Downs would be a really nice fit there, but I'll hold off on that just because they just drafted Khalil Shakir last year. So I don't know that you need to replace him. So I'm going to take Steve Avila, the guard from they could use tackle help for sure, but I think he's the best guard left. So I'm going to take Avila from TCU to the Bills at 27.
I like it. He's my second favorite interior offensive lineman, so he definitely will help them in the run game, moving people off the ball, and he's more than stout in the pass game. So really do like Steve Avila. I think he's going to be really, really, really good. A lot faster than people think. So could be a steal for the Bills there for sure. Who we got up next?
Bengals.
Oh, Bengals at 28 here. This is a no-brainer for me. You go Dalton Kincaid tight end out of Utah. I think he's a perfect fit, especially with Joe Burrow. I mean, he loves his tight ends, right? But you get a guy that can stretch the field. Literally, you can go, twins with him and spread him out wide. He can play the inside receiver position. He's done it plenty of times at Utah. If you want to watch a game to show you Dalton Kincaid's prowess and what he could be like at his peak, go watch the Utah versus USC game. There's plenty of highlights on YouTube where you can just go watch all of his catches. But I want you to watch the whole game, because even when he wasn't getting the ball, how much attention he commanded and demanded from the defense. He's a guy that can really open things up, especially in the passing game for the Bengals. They're already really good, but he's talking about getting more one-on-one matchups with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. He's a guy that gives you that, especially right off the bat. He's going to make a really seamless transition running routes and being a receiver. He can definitely improve as a blocker, but you're not going to ask him to do a ton of inline blocking there in Cincinnati. You're going to get him out in space and let him do his thing, and I think he'll be a great fit for them here.
All right. I like it. Makes a lot of sense for sure. They could use more offense always, right? When you have something good, just build on it. Their defense isn't really lacking specifically in one place, so I don't think you have to overthink it. All right. So the Saints are interesting. They could use a Miles Murphy. Who else do I really like here? Who are my favorite guys just that are still available?
Jahmyr Gibbs is a prospect here. If Miles Murphy is a great fit, but if you're talking about a replacement for Kamara, this is the Gibbs range right here. Especially, it just makes perfect sense with the fit of the team.
All right, yeah. I mean, I think that does actually make a lot of sense. All right, you talked me into it.
Jahmyr Gibbs. Whew.
Yeah,
I was literally getting ready to take him, so you just can't. But no, I like that a lot.
No,
I love that.
Jahmyr Gibbs, he makes a lot of sense. I like Miles Murphy to them, but in terms of like what they would do, but in terms of like what I think their best asset would be, it's him. I mean, I think it takes pressure off of a lot of other guys. Kamara has seen a lot of snaps in his time, and I think he's supposed to miss time this year anyway for suspension. I think that's this year. So, yeah, it's the time with him. He's been a little bit less effective as time's gone on, just in general, just as guys tend to be. So I think this is great. And then, if you got both for a minute, great. If you can move on from one, then maybe you end up actually saving some money on the cap for once, which would be a first for them. So, but I'll do it. All right. The New Orleans Saints at 29 are going to select running back Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama. All right, so we've only got 2 picks left, and the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. Is there anybody here that jumps off the screen as like an easy pick for you?
They don't have an offensive line need. They have a really good offensive line. They have some depth there as well. This is the range where I would have loved to pick a Steve Avila. I think it would have been perfect here to replace Isaac Malu at guard here. But I'm going to do something a little bit unconventional here, because I think they want to continue their vertical passing game, their vertical passing ability. And A.J. Brown is definitely a 50-50 ball guy. You get him a lot of touches, but I think Jalen Hyatt at this spot can really unlock the offense in a way that we haven't seen. You have 3 guys that can really burn you, and it just creates mismatches all over the place. And I think they're in a position to swing for the fence here a little bit with a guy like that. I love Trenton Simpson here. I think this might be a good spot for him. Late first round with the second to last pick of the first round, because they do have a linebacker need. But you know what? I think you could probably get a really good linebacker prospect later in the draft. We've seen it a lot with linebackers here lately. You can get a second, third, fourth round guy. He could be a contributor. But you can't teach speed, and Jalen Hyatt has a ton of that. And you're not going to ask him to run a ton of the route tree, because you have Devontae Smith to do that. You have A.J. Brown to give you a lot of the stuff that you want from a little bit more well-rounded guy. So you talk about a fit that creates nasty matchups, and you still have Dallas Goedert at tight end. I mean, how do you cover those guys? It's impossible to cover all of those guys. So I like Jalen Hyatt here. It's a little bit unconventional, but the NFC champs can afford to do some stuff like this and take some risk.
Okay, I can get down with that. I can. I mean, I don't love Hyatt that high in the draft in general, but I mean, I think adding strength on strength is a good idea. I really do. And they don't have any like just obvious needs anywhere. So
Yeah.
I would have really liked Kalijah Cansey to them because I feel like as a rotational guy, he could be extremely impactful, especially if they're running up the score on people. Then they just get him in there and he's wrecking house as a pass rusher. So I really like that. Because they've got plenty of big bodies already. But the offensive line's great. The defensive line is good in general. Interesting that Miles Murphy looks like he's going to fall out of the first round here but that's kind of how I feel about him. Like, I feel like that he could go late first or after, and I'd be fine with it. But I feel like Hyatt needs some work as a route runner. But so where do you line him up? You just have him on the outside, and you just move Devontae Smith as a slot guy more?
You can do whatever you want with them. I mean, they both have.
Right.
They all have lined up inside, outside. I'm thinking whatever the matchup is for that week, where you have the biggest mismatch, you put the slowest footed guy, and you line Jalen Hyde up over that guy, and you let him run past him all game because you trust Devontae Smith and you trust AJ Brown to get open from whatever position they're in, static, moving, in motion, or whatever you have for them. You definitely expect those guys to win their matchups. So you take the matchup, the slow-footed guy, and you put Jalen Hyde on him and let him run by him all game. Because even if you're not throwing him the ball, he's going to command that attention. He's going to open it up for the underneath stuff. He's going to open it up for the tight ends and the rest of the guys. So I like the pick.
Okay. All right. And that means for pick 31, the Kansas City Chiefs, I am going to take Kalijah Cansey because they've got Derek Jones and they've got Derek Jones. They've got Chris Jones and they've got Derek Nottie, who is, their run stuffer on early downs, and then you slide Kalijah Cansey in there once you run up the score on teams and you have him rush the passer. And I think Derek Jones next to, you're getting consistent double teams on him. I keep saying Derek Jones, Chris Jones in there. You keep getting double teams on him. And that leaves one-on-one opportunities for Kalijah Cansey. And I really like him as a pass rusher. I think he is a first-round caliber player. I understand he's not huge, but I think could be a liability on some of the best run blocking guards, but I don't think he's going to be a run defending liability against everybody. I've seen him anchor pretty well for his size, so I don't think that you want him to be a run play guy necessarily, but I don't think that you're going to get in situations where he's like a massive problem, and I think he brings a lot of upside as a pass rusher. So I'm going to take Kalijah Cansey, add a little bit more pass rush to the Chiefs. What do you think about that?
I have more concerns about Cansey than most people, and it's not because of his skill set. I think his skill set is really unique, and I think it's really valuable. It's just where people have, I've seen him as high as 16 before, and I'm like, I just don't understand it. Not because I don't love the player. We're just talking about the value, the bang for the buck. Like right here, 31 is where I could see the Chiefs taking a Dawan Jones and put him at right tackle. I think that would be a prime pick for them. I think they have more needs, but I love Kalijah Cansey as a player, and I think he's going to be really impactful at the next level. So I don't think it's a reach per se at all. I just think that there might be some better fits for the pick and the value. But like you said, he's a guy that fits with the Chiefs. I mean, when you're the champions, when you're as good as you are, when you have as much money as they have to rebuild the roster year to year, when you're as good at drafting as they are, you can afford to take some risk and take a guy like this. So I don't hate the pick at all.
Yeah, I think Dawan Jones would have been interesting at right tackle. I don't know if he's necessarily the best fit though either, just because with his size and the amount that they pass, you might tire him out, right? I mean, even he's bigger even than Orlando Brown, right? Because Brown is he's 6'7", 340 or something like that.
Yeah, he's bigger than Orlando Brown. I think he moves better though, which is hilarious. I think he moves better than Orlando Brown Jr. does, but he is literally about 30 pounds bigger and an inch taller.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for me, you put him on a team that passes the ball at such a higher percentage than runs the ball, and the speed with which they play just in general, I would be a little bit concerned about him holding up to that type of offense. But you also know I like Jones more than a lot of guys do. So I would have been fine
in college a lot. So that's why they threw the ball 35, 40 times in college, and they did some simple stuff. So, I mean, the NFL is obviously a different beast. There's no question about that. But I do think he would be okay. I mean, and I think they have a really good offensive line coach as well. You talk about developing guys. I'll be interested to see what they do with Darian Kennard, the guy they took out of Kentucky, if they bump him inside, if he's just a swing tackle, whatever they do with him. But they do a really good job of developing guys. So I think they'll continue to have him drop some more weight. We talked about this before, but I think you'll see him drop another 10, 15 pounds, and because he'll have the vertical set there, which he didn't do a lot of at Ohio State if he was to go there. But I think you'll see this guy be developed. Dajuan is going to continue to drop weight. He has a really good team around him. I know he signed with Clutch Sports, LeBron James' agency, and they have a really good team around him, and they're advising him. They're making sure he's on top of his game. So I think he's grown on me in the draft process a lot. I will say that I was not very high on this guy coming out of the season just because he plays really good against the really good competition, and he plays just average against the average competition. And it was just like I felt like he played to his competition level. But going through the pre-draft process, like seeing the team around him, how well he did the combine, how serious he's taking it. He lost a lot of weight, similar to Osiris Torrance. Those guys really got in shape and kind of dispelled some of those rumors pretty fast. I think Dajuan's going to end up being the steal here. And can't believe I'm saying it now because I was not saying this 3 months ago before the Senior Bowl when I really got a chance to deep dive on him.
Yeah, I get that. I fell in love with him watching the Georgia game because there was so much to love. I've talked about it a little bit, but the patience, the timing, he definitely has an advantage because of the length with his punches, but the timing is just very, very good. Right. And he's an intelligent player, you can tell. And maybe he might be a little immature, and that's something you worry about, but as like a general thing, but as a player, he's quite aware. I would be honestly surprised if he fell out of the first round. I think that's one of the things I thought about him to the Bills, but it was the same kind of thing. Like they throw the ball so much. Maybe looking back, he would have been a better pick for them than Steve Avila because he would help them run the ball. He would man that right tackle spot. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that would have been a better pick, but it's just, I just worry about him in like a super pass heavy offense, just from, conditioning standpoint. Cause it's like, no matter when you're that big, I think you can be in great shape and it's still tough. But yeah, so he's a guy that, if you just look at who's still available, a couple of guys, he's still available. Miles Murphy's still available. Deontay Banks is still available. There's definitely some high quality players that still will be there at the top of round 2. I love Joe Tippmann. John Michael Schmitz will still be there at the top of round 2 based on this mock as well. So
Texans are praying he falls to 33. That'd be a perfect spot for that guy.
John Michael Schmitz, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for sure. All right. That'll do it for us today, man. We will be back on Thursday. I think it's going to be a bit of a late night shift to our live streams. Things are a little bit in flux. I have some family stuff that's kind of shifted when we're available for podcasting. Nick has a new job, so he's relatively unavailable for the time being. So we might be able to get him on some of these Monday shows. But I think I'll be back on Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern. So maybe some later shows. Might only do an hour for the Thursday night shows. And then we are really hoping to do a draft live stream. So we'll see. I'm not sure yet. I don't want to fully promise or commit, but I am definitely hoping for that. All right. You can find me at TheMaxDean. You can find Kyron at Kyron Samuels. You can find Defiant Takes Football at Defiant Takes on all social media outlets. We are live here every Monday and Thursday, even though the times may fluctuate a little bit for the next couple of weeks until we find something that works. And you can find all of our written content over at DefiantTakesFootball.com. We are currently in the middle of a team mock draft where someone's representing every team. And we're all making picks, and then we're going to have articles out on all of those picks and why they were made. You can also find 7-round mock drafts for individual teams up right now. So some cool stuff there. Guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all very soon.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.